Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video we're going to be taking a look at how to use ModSecurity to secure your Apache web server. Now we've already taken a look at how to configure Apache security, and we've taken a look at the plethora of options available to us within the Apache configuration and how we can sort of solidify our security from an Apache standpoint, but we really haven't taken a look at web application firewalls. And the reason I opted for ModSecurity is, number one, it works natively and was designed for Apache, and of course we'll be taking a look at how to use it with Nginx, but we're going to be doing that in the next video. In this video we're focusing on Apache. So what exactly is ModSecurity? If you've never heard of ModSecurity, I don't blame you. It really isn't that well known, even amongst security professionals, but it really is very powerful if you know how to use it. So ModSecurity is a free and open source web application firewall for Apache. So it started out as an Apache module. It still is, but you'll see exactly why I'm saying it's extremely powerful. And as I said, it's grown into almost a fully-fledged web application firewall. So how exactly does a web application firewall work? Or really, how does any firewall work? Well, it does this by inspecting requests that are being sent to your web server in real time, and then of course using predefined rules to actually decide or come to a judgment as to whether or not this request is malicious or not. So for example, if I request a web page on a web server and it's a standard web page, nothing wrong with it, then the web server responds and allows me to view that particular web page. Now, with ModSecurity in place, if attackers start performing attacks like cross-site scripting attacks, SQL injection attacks, ModSecurity is analyzing these requests and is going to be looking for these particular requests and is going to be blocking them, right? And of course, this will work in conjunction with particular core rule sets that we'll be using. In this particular case, we'll be using the OWASP core rule set. Now, before we get into all of that, I've set up a quick little server here and it's running PHP my admin. And of course, the only reason I did that is to actually demonstrate that this does work. And again, you can set it up with any other web application that you have. It'll work just fine. So I've already logged in and I'm on my web server here, and we can get started immediately by looking at how to install ModSecurity. So firstly, to install ModSecurity, all we need to do is type in sudo apt install. We then specify lib Apache. So this is a ModSecurity is an Apache mod, as I said. So a lib Apache2 mod, and we're looking for security2. Its alias is security2, and then we'll just hit yes to install it directly, and that's going to install it without any issues. There we go. So that's installed, and the first thing we need to do now is we probably need to restart it or restart Apache. But before we do that, let's also enable the headers module for Apache. So that can be done by typing in a2nmod, and we say headers, like so, and it's going to say to activate the new configuration, you need to run the following command. That will actually restart Apache2 with system control. So restart Apache2, and all right, so that's done. Now, as I said, when we're talking about ModSecurity or a firewall in general, we need to have rules. In the previous series, we took a look at things like UFW, the uncomplicated firewall. We took a look at IP tables, and the key or overriding value there was the fact that we had rules, right? And rules essentially control what happens and what doesn't happen. In this case, it will control what requests get accepted and what requests get blocked based on whether or not they're malicious. So ModSecurity again requires rules. Now, the rules that we're going to be using are the OWASP, let me just open this up. So these are the OWASP ModSecurity core rule set. Now, again, you can take a look at the description here. It actually gives a very nice introduction into the whole idea. So the OWASP ModSecurity core rule set is a set of generic attack detection rules for use with ModSecurity or compatible web application firewalls. The core rule set aims to protect web applications from a wide range of attacks, including the OWASP top 10, which again you can check out to look at the top 10 vulnerabilities that are currently facing web applications. And you can see we have injection, broken authentication, so on and so forth. With minimum false alerts, and the core rule set provides protection against many common attack categories, including SQL injection, cross-site scripting, local file inclusion. Now, by default, we already have a core rule set, if I'm not mistaken. If I just list out the actual directory here, sorry, ls lps, and we list out the directory, which should be under, it should be under the user share directory. So user share, and if we try ModSecurity, these are the ModSecurity core rule sets. In this particular case, we are going to need to actually remove this folder and replace it with our own rules, which in this case will be the OWASP ModSecurity rule set. So we'll just go into the installation tutorial right over here, and we're just going to click on the GitHub repository. So we'll copy that link, and we'll just copy it. There we are. So we want to remove, so sudo remove, and we want to remove the entire directory. So user share, and let me just clear the screen so I can bring that up, and we can actually just zoom out. So there we are, ModSecurity CRS, and we want to remove that directory. We then want to say git clone, and then we want to copy the GitHub repository, and we want to replace it with the directory that we just deleted. So essentially, we are putting in the OWASP core rule set into the ModSecurity core rule set folder. So user share, and we say ModSecurity CRS, because we deleted that folder, so we need to create it again. So that's going to clone that into the ModSecurity core rule set. And if we list out the contents of the core rule set now, sorry, I actually just deleted it again. We'll just download it one more time. I just wanted to display the contents of it. So sudo, we'll actually just list it before we do that. So user share, and we list out the contents of that particular directory. You can see we have the core rule set setup, which we are going to rename and get rid of the example option. We also have the rules, so you can actually explore the rules yourself. So if I open up the GitHub repository here, and we take a look at the rules, you can see the rules essentially contains a list of exclusions for particular web applications, for particular popular web applications. So for example, we have Drupal, WordPress, Nextcloud. We also have PHPMyAdmin. So all of these rules are again targeted for particular web applications, which you can actually do this here. You also have DOS protection configurations, and you can go through all of these rules, and these rules here will pretty much guarantee a very, very good level of security for your web server. So before we start taking a look at testing this, we need to rename this here into the configuration file. So we say we can actually just say move, because we don't need to do that manually. So we'll say move user share and ModSecurity CRS, and we're looking for the CRS setup, right? And we want to rename it to user share. We'll just do it in the same directory, and we'll call it CRS setup.conf. So get rid of the example, and now the configuration file is active. Now I don't recommend playing around with the core rule set configuration file. You can tweak it if you're having issues with tons of false positives, but by default it should be okay. You shouldn't actually have any issues there. Okay, so now that we've done that, we now need to also we actually need to take a look at the actual configuration for ModSecurity now, as opposed to the core rule set. So if we list out the contents of etc, which is where the configuration files are stored, so etc, and we're looking for ModSecurity, you can see within here we have the ModSecurity configuration file, and again we need to rename this to exclude the recommended option. And again, you can modify the ModSecurity configuration file based on your needs. But before we do that, let's actually rename it. So etc, and that's ModSecurity, and we're going to say ModSecurity.conf, and we again just going to say etc ModSecurity, and we'll just rename it to ModSecurity.conf. Okay. And again, you can take a look at this. If I actually use Vim here, so ModSecurity and ModSecurity.conf, this is your default ModSecurity configuration file. Now, in order to enable active blocking or active exclusions using ModSecurity, we need to actually change the security rule engine to on instead of detection only. So in its current state, when an attacker will send a malicious request, the only thing ModSecurity will do is it's going to detect it. It's not going to block it. And we want to enable the security rule engine. And we want to do this by typing in on, right? So we just want to say on, and that is capital O-N, right? Sorry, my bad. For some reason, it's, there we go. So sec rule engine on, and we want to save that. I'm using Vim here, so we'll just save. So save and quit. And that should enable the security rule engine within ModSecurity. Now we've already set up the OWASP ModSecurity core rule set. We now need to enable ModSecurity within Apache. Now the way we can do this is if we actually modify the default Apache configuration file. So vim etc Apache, that is Apache2. And for some reason I keep typing in or using my caps lock. So there we are. You can see I included the phpMyAdmin inclusion here. So we'll just include it below this. And what we want to do is we are using the security tool module, which is ModSecurity. So we need to use the if option. So we say if module, and I believe this already is explained within here. If we actually take a look at the GitHub repository for the core rule set, if we take a look at the install options, so you can see right over here, it actually says we use if module security2 module, and then we include the directory of the core rule set. So that's what we're going to do now. Okay, so we're going to say if module, and where the module name, as I said, is security2, and that is underscore module. Sorry, we'll just say underscore module. And we want to close that up. And again, we're just going to close the if module. For some reason, my keyboard seems to be giving up on me now. So again, we'll just close the if module tag here. And then within this, we now need to include our, the directory of the core rule set, because we're loading it into the default Apache configuration, right? So we're going to say include, and we say user share a ModSecurity this is really weird. All right, so ModSecurity, and then we say CRS, so the core rule set, and then what are we loading? So we're going to be loading the setup, the setup file, so CRS setup.conf, and then we want to include the user, so that's under the same directory, so user share, and we're going to say ModSecurity, and we'll say CRS, and we now want to load the rules. All right, so the rules are stored under rules, and this will load up all the rules for us. And we're then going to say load all the rules, and that we can use the wildcard option and say conf. So all the rules, that are stored in the form of a configuration file, which all of them are. All right. So now that we've included this, what I'm going to do is I am just going to copy this, because typically you also want to include this in your default Apache directory configuration for your enabled sites. That's if you have virtual hosts configured. So if you have more than one site on your website or on your web server. Okay, so now that we've done this, again, as I said, it's always good practice to save, to open up your Apache sites enabled directory. So Apache2, and we're looking for sites enabled. And if you have any of your SSL websites, you can also change the configuration in here. So within this, we also want to include the sec engine rule or sec rule engine, the security rule engine inclusion here. So we want to activate it here. So sec rule engine, and we want to set that to on. And then within this, we're just going to paste in what we had copied earlier, and we can just tab this. And there we are. We can just configure that and make sure that that is loaded up well. Sorry, let me just undo that. For some reason, that's not, you can actually just do this one more time. And there we are. Okay. So just make sure that that is set in correctly, and we can now save and exit. And we should be able to restart Apache now without any particular issues. So system control restart Apache2. And there we go. So now we can actually get started by testing ModSecurity, because we've pretty much guaranteed that we have everything running. And as I said, we're using the OWASP core rule set. So, you know, there's tons of tests that we can actually do. One of them, you know, being an SQL injection attack. So for example, if I reload the web page, you can see PHP-admin is still working here. And on my default directory, if I can just get rid of this default directory here, you can see we have the default Apache Ubuntu page here. So again, I'll just go back to PHP-admin so that I can actually demonstrate. If we try and perform something like an SQL injection attack, and I try and use the let's try and use the single quote here, you can see it's going to tell us access denied for that particular user. So let's try and use the single comment or the single quote. So it looks like login without a password is forbidden. So actually, I don't think we can actually test this here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to log in. So we're going to say Alexis, and so I'm just going to get the password. All right, and we'll just log in here directly. We should be able to log into PHP-admin. All right, excellent. So if I try and perform, or if I try and perform some, parameter tampering, and I say, maybe we can try and execute bin or bash, or try and get a reverse shell this way. Sorry. Let's see if I can execute that correctly. Bin bash, you can see it tells me you don't have permission to access this resource. Now, this is a valid URL in and of itself, and again, you can actually see in this case, it doesn't actually tell us that it wasn't able to find the page, but it actually blocks it and says it's forbidden, or you don't have access to this particular page. Now, as I've already said, ModSecurity has tons of rule sets, or the core rules, or the OWASP core rule set for ModSecurity has tons of rules for various web applications, and you can go through them here. Now, the types of attacks it actually prevents, you can see we have local file inclusion, RCE, cross-site scripting, SQL injection, so on and so forth. So again, there's tons of ways you can actually test all of these. And for example, that's just one example here. And if I just say, bin bash, you can see it actually denies or prevents us from doing that. If we try and maybe perform a cross-site scripting attack, if I can look for an input field here, let's try and create a new database, for example, and we say, script, there we are, script alert, and this is a simple, cross-site scripting test. We try and hit enter, you can see error in processing request, and that's forbidden. Now, the reason it's doing that, believe it or not, is because ModSecurity is actually blocking this. Now, of course, it's it's difficult for me to actually test this, or to actually prove that it's working. So what we can do, if I go back into the default configuration, and if I disable the sec rule engine with that, I think I can actually do it from here. Sorry. So let me just disable this, and we'll also disable the module here, and there we go. And let's write in quit, and we can then restart Apache one more time. And if I try and create the database again, you can now see I'm able to create it. Now, this, of course, it really doesn't do anything, because this particular input field is not vulnerable to a cross-site scripting attack. But if it was vulnerable to a cross-site scripting attack, it would actually display a dialog, because we're using JavaScript, and it would tell me test, right? But in this particular case, you can see when ModSecurity is disabled, it actually allowed me to execute that. Now, if I again try to execute a shell session here, and I used exec is equal to bin bash, so local file inclusion, you can see it actually executes that. Now, of course, nothing happens, and that's because PHP-admin isn't vulnerable to a local file inclusion attack. But if your web application was vulnerable, then of course this can pose a potential issue. So I'll just delete this particular database. So drop, we'll just hit drop. There we are, and that's dropped successfully. And if we activate ModSecurity now, again, we can do that using the sites enabled configuration, because again, this is where all your site configurations will be. And we enable the rule engine, and we then write in quit, and then we restart Apache again. And again, if we try and execute that same local file inclusion attack, you can see it's now going to tell us it's blocked. Now, of course, there's multiple ways you can test this, or there's multiple ways you can actually use ModSecurity to protect your web application. But by default, if you're using WordPress or any of these content management systems, you can definitely set up ModSecurity, and it'll give you a certain level of protection against attacks. Now, of course, if particular plugins within these content management systems are vulnerable to potential or other types of exploits, that are leveraged through third-party libraries and stuff like that, then of course you're dealing with a much more complex attack. But again, this is very, very, very comprehensive. The rule set is excellent, and you can see you have SQL errors, PowerShell commands, so really, really, really comprehensive. I definitely recommend using the OWASP core rule set. And that's pretty much it in regards to ModSecurity.